The weight of eternity. The archives beneath Castle Stormmore smelled of dust and ancient parchment, of secrets preserved through millennia. Edrick stood before a table laden with scrolls and leather-bound volumes, their pages yellowed with age, their text written in languages that predated his kingdom by centuries. Shamaz sat hunched over one particularly ancient tome, his weathered fingers tracing lines of script that glowed faintly silver in the lamplight. Rose leaned against the wall near the door, her arms crossed, her eyes never leaving Edrick. She hadn't slept in 3 days. Neither had he, though for different reasons. Sleep was becoming optional for him now. Another thing the Devourer was trying to take away. Another connection to his humanity that the ancient evil sought to sever. "Here," Shamaz said, his voice rough with exhaustion. He tapped a passage in the tome before him. "This is from the Third Age, written by a scholar named Verath, who studied the original binding. Listen. The vessel who accepts the darkness without surrendering to it becomes eternal as the darkness itself. Flesh may persist beyond its natural span, sustained by the very force it contains. But eternity is not freedom. It is the cruelest prison of all." Edrick felt the fragment pulse in his chest, a steady rhythm like a second heartbeat. The Devourer's voice whispered through his thoughts. "Did you think you could cage me without consequences, little king? Did you imagine yourself a hero?" "Eternal," Edrick repeated, his voice flat. "You said I couldn't die while bound to it. You didn't say I couldn't age." Shamaz looked up, his dark eyes filled with something that might have been pity. "The text suggests otherwise. The binding sustains you. Your body will not decay while the Devourer lives within you. You will not sicken. You will not grow old." Rose pushed away from the wall. "That's impossible. Everything ages. Everything dies." "Not everything," Shamaz said quietly. "The Devourer has existed for eons. It remembers the world before humanity learned to make fire. When you bound it to your flesh, you bound yourself to its timelessness." The Devourer's amusement rippled through Edrick's consciousness like dark water. "Centuries, little king, millennia. You will watch your Rose grow old and die. You will watch her children die, and their children, and their children's children. You will stand upon the ruins of this castle when the stones have crumbled to dust, and I will be there with you, waiting, patient, eternal." Edrick's hands clenched into fists. The green light in his chest pulsed brighter, responding to his distress. "How long? How long before I've outlived everyone I know?" Shamaz hesitated. "The text doesn't specify, but if the binding holds, decades, certainly, perhaps centuries, perhaps longer." "Stop," Rose said sharply. "You're talking about him like he's already dead, like he's already lost." "He hasn't lost," Shamaz said, standing slowly. His joints creaked with age, a reminder that he, unlike Edrick, would continue to grow old. But he has changed, and we must understand what that means. Edrick moved to the narrow window that looked out over the castle courtyard. Dawn was breaking, painting the sky in shades of gray and pale gold. Below, guards changed shifts. Servants hurried about their morning tasks, people living their brief, precious lives, unaware that their king had become something that would outlive them all. "You see it now," the Devourer whispered. "The true nature of your prison. You thought to cage me, but you have only caged yourself. In 100 years, when everyone you love is dust, you will beg me to set you free. You will beg me to let you die." "No," Edrick said aloud, though he wasn't sure if he was speaking to the entity or to himself. "There has to be another way." "There may be," Shamaz said carefully. He gestured to the scattered texts. "These are records of the original binding, yes, but also of attempts to strengthen it, to make it permanent. King Aldrich lived for decades after taking the heart fragment into himself. The texts say he grew different, distant, but he never surrendered, not until his death." "He died," Edrick said. "You just said I can't." "Aldrich only carried one fragment," Shamaz replied. "You carry all 5. The binding is different, stronger, but also more complete." He paused, choosing his words carefully. "Aldrich could die because the Devourer was divided, its power scattered, but you have made yourself the prison for its entirety. As long as it exists, you exist. The only way to truly end your life would be to destroy the Devourer completely." Rose's voice was sharp. "Then we destroy it." "We don't know how," Shamaz said. "The sealing blade was meant to contain, not to kill. It's forged from the Devourer's own essence. It can cut the creature's influence. But can it truly end something that has existed since before time itself? Edrick turned from the window. His eyes were still human, still gray-blue, but they held a weight that hadn't been there before. Then we find a way. You said there are records of attempts to strengthen the binding. What did they try? Shamaz gestured to the table. Rituals, wards, mental disciplines from the old Urith traditions, meditation techniques from Naswaiwana, ways to build walls in your mind that the Devourer cannot breach, ways to maintain your humanity even as it tries to erode your connection to the world. Teach me, Edrick said. For the next hour, Shamaz explained what he had found. Ancient practices for compartmentalizing the mind, for creating sanctuaries within consciousness where the Devourer could not reach. Breathing techniques that anchored awareness in the physical body. Mantras that reinforced identity and will. It was a war fought not with swords but with discipline, with the constant, exhausting effort of remaining oneself against an enemy that lived within. Rose listened, her expression growing darker. This is torture. You're describing a life of constant battle with no rest, no peace. Yes, Shamaz said simply. That is what Edrick has chosen. That is what it means to be a living prison. The Devourer laughed, a sound like wind through dead trees. Do you see? Do you understand what you have done to yourself? You thought yourself clever. You thought yourself brave. But you have only bought yourself an eternity of suffering. Better than the alternative, Edrick said. Better than letting you destroy everything. For now, the Devourer replied. But time favors me, little king. Time always favors me. A knock at the door interrupted them. Commander Aldwin entered without waiting for permission, her face grim. Your Majesty, we have a situation. Edrick felt his heart sink, or would have if he still experienced such physical responses naturally. The cultists? They've sent a delegation, 7 of them unarmed, requesting an audience. Aldwin's hand rested on her sword hilt. They claim they want to negotiate. Rose's laugh was bitter. Negotiate what? They want their god back. Perhaps, Aldwin said. But they're at our gates, and they're not leaving. They say they'll wait as long as necessary to speak with the king. Edrick exchanged glances with Shamaz. The old scholar's expression was troubled. This could be valuable. We need to understand how the cult operates, how many of them there are, what their plans might be. If they're willing to talk... It's a trap, Rose said flatly, or a test. They want to see if he's still in control. Then let them see, Edrick said. He straightened, rolling his shoulders. The fragment pulsed in his chest, eager, hungry. Let them see that their god is caged and I am still king. Brave words, the Devourer murmured. But can you maintain the illusion? Can you face my faithful without revealing how close you are to breaking? I'm not close to breaking, Edrick said quietly. Not yet, the Devourer agreed, but you will be. They made their way through the castle to the great hall. Word had spread quickly. Nobles, guards, servants all pressed against walls and peered from doorways, watching their king pass. Edrick could feel their fear, their uncertainty. The fragment in his chest was visible even through his armor now, a steady green glow that marked him as something other than human. The 7 cultists waited in the center of the hall, flanked by guards with drawn swords. They wore simple gray robes, unmarked and unadorned. Their faces were hidden beneath deep hoods. They stood in perfect stillness, patient as stones. Edrick took his seat on the throne, the ancient seat carved with symbols older than his kingdom. Rose positioned herself at his right hand, her hand on her sword. Shamaz stood at his left, leaning on his staff. Commander Aldwin remained near the entrance, watching everything. You requested an audience, Edrick said. His voice carried through the hall, steady and controlled. Speak. The central figure stepped forward and lowered its hood. It was a woman, perhaps 40, with gray-streaked dark hair and eyes that reflected no light. Corruption marked her, faint green traceries beneath her skin, like veins filled with poison. Your Majesty, she said, and her voice was surprisingly soft. We come not as enemies, but as concerned parties. You have imprisoned our god. We cannot allow this to stand. Your god tried to destroy my kingdom, Edrick replied. It sought to consume everything. I did what was necessary. You did what was arrogant, the woman said. You believe you can cage infinity? You believe your human will can hold against something that has existed since before your world was born? The fragment stirred, responding to the presence of its faithful. The Devourer's voice grew stronger. They know the truth. They know you cannot hold me forever. I don't need forever, Edrick said. I just need long enough. The woman tilted her head. Long enough for what? To find a way to destroy what cannot be destroyed? To kill what cannot die? She smiled, and it was a terrible expression. We are patient, Your Majesty. We have 2,000 faithful across your kingdom. We will wait. We will watch, and when you break, and you will break, we will be there to welcome our God home. And if I don't break? Edrick asked. The woman's smile widened. Then you will live forever in torment, and we will wait forever to see you fall. Either way, time favors us. It was exactly what the Devourer had said. Edrick felt a chill that had nothing to do with temperature. They weren't here to negotiate. They were here to deliver a message. You have already lost. You just don't know it yet. Is that all? Edrick asked. The woman bowed slightly. We will maintain our vigil outside your walls. We will not attack. We will not threaten. We will simply wait, and when the moment comes, we will be ready. She paused. One more thing, Your Majesty. A gift from those who serve the eternal hunger. She produced a small object from her robes and placed it on the floor before the throne. Then she and her companions turned and walked from the hall, moving in perfect synchronization. When they were gone, Rose moved forward cautiously. The object was a mirror, small and circular, its surface dark as obsidian. She picked it up carefully, then froze. Edrick, she said, her voice strange. Look at this. Edrick descended from the throne and took the mirror. When he looked into its surface, he saw not his own reflection, but something else. A figure seated on a throne of living darkness, wreathed in green fire, burning with ancient hunger. It wore his face, but the eyes were wrong, old and vast and utterly inhuman. This is what you will become, the Devourer whispered. This is what waits at the end of your struggle. You can see it now. The mirror shows only truth. Edrick's hand trembled. For a moment, he saw it clearly. The future that awaited him if he failed. Or perhaps the future that awaited him even if he succeeded. An eternity of warfare, of constant vigilance, of slowly losing pieces of himself until nothing remained but the prison and its prisoner, merged into something neither human nor monster but something worse. Then Rose's hand closed over his, warm and solid and real. That's not you, she said firmly. That's what it wants you to see. That's the fear it's trying to plant. Edrick looked up from the mirror into Rose's eyes. She was right. The mirror was a weapon, a tool of psychological warfare. The cultists hadn't come to negotiate. They'd come to weaken his resolve, to make him doubt, to show him the horror of what he'd become. But they'd made a mistake. They'd shown him the worst possibility, yes, but they'd also shown him what he was fighting against, and that made him more determined, not less. Commander Aldwin, Edrick said, his voice steady again. Double the guards on the walls. I want constant watch on the cultist encampment, and send riders to every stronghold in the kingdom. I want to know where every cultist gathering is located. Your Majesty, Aldwin said, saluting. Edrick turned to Shamaz. Continue your research. Find me every technique, every discipline, every scrap of knowledge about maintaining the binding. I don't care how ancient or obscure. Shamaz nodded. I will search until I find answers. Finally, Edrick looked at Rose. I need you to do something for me. Anything, she said immediately. I need you to keep living, Edrick said quietly. I need you to remind me what I'm fighting for. Because if I'm going to carry this burden for decades or centuries, I need to remember why it matters. I need to remember what it means to be human. Rose's eyes glistened, but she didn't look away. I'll be here, for as long as I can. The unspoken truth hung between them. She would age, she would die, and he would remain, unchanged, carrying the burden long after she was gone. But for now, she was here, and that was enough. Edrick returned to his chambers as the sun climbed higher. The mirror sat on his desk, its dark surface reflecting nothing. He knew he should destroy it, throw it from the battlements, or shatter it against stone. But something made him keep it. Perhaps because it was honest, perhaps because denying the truth of what he might become would only make it more likely. The Devourer was quiet now, watching, learning. It had delivered its message through its faithful. Time favors us. You cannot win. You can only delay the inevitable. But Edrick had learned something too. The cultists were afraid. They wouldn't have sent a delegation if they were certain of victory. They wouldn't have tried to weaken him with psychological warfare if they believed he would simply break on his own. They were patient, yes. They would wait, yes. But they were also uncertain, and that uncertainty was a weapon he could use. Edrick stood at his window, looking out over his kingdom. 200 cultists stood in perfect rows beyond the gates, waiting. Somewhere in the archives below, Shamaz searched for answers in texts 3,000 years old. Somewhere in the castle, Rose sharpened her sword and prepared to keep her promise, to save him or to kill him, whichever became necessary. And deep within his chest, the Devourer raged against its prison, testing the bars, searching for weakness, patient as only something eternal could be patient. Edrick placed his hand over the fragment. He could feel it pulsing, alive, hungry. "You're right," he said quietly. "Time does favor you, but it also teaches patience, and I'm going to learn to be more patient than you ever imagined." The Devourer's laughter echoed through his mind, but beneath it, Edrick thought he detected something else. Something that might have been uncertainty, might have been fear. He had become something new when he imprisoned the ancient evil within himself, something that had never existed before. Neither king nor monster, but a fusion of both, held together by will and discipline and the desperate determination to protect what he loved. The cultists called it impossible. The Devourer called it temporary. But Edrick knew something they didn't. He knew that humans had survived impossible things before. They had endured. They had adapted. They had found ways to carry burdens that should have crushed them. He would do the same, for as long as it took, for as long as he had to, even if it took forever.
Thanks for watching our stories. Don't forget to like and subscribe for more epic adventures.